Hi friends, welcome to webcam. In this video, I'm going to discuss loops in Python. So if you want to do something in a programming, okay, what we can do, we can write the code. Okay, so what is the my concern is like, let's say if I have to print hello. Okay, I can write like this, right? Let me correct this hello. Okay, and if I run this, okay, this is printing one time. But let's say I wanted to print this for a couple of times more. What I need to do? I can copy this. Okay, for 5 times I copied, and then if I run this, okay, it is fine. Okay, so we can print. But let's say you have to do the same thing for 1,000 times. It's not a good idea to print 1,000 times, meaning to write the print function 1,000 times. Right? That is not good. Okay. So meaning what you are trying to do here, you have a one line of code that you wanted to execute for the multiple times. For the multiple times. How many times? It depends. But yes, you can do these kinds of programming with the help of loops. Loops helps you to avoid the writing code repeatedly. Instead, you can write once and execute many times. That is what the actual purpose of loops. Okay, let's understand what is loop now. So loops are control structure that allows you to execute a block of code for number of times until the specified condition is true. Okay. Now, the loops are essential. Why loops are required? To automate the repetitive tasks. Okay, obviously, it's as I said, it's not a good idea to go and write the code for printing hello for 1,000 times. Why? You don't need to do this in case of programming. Each and every type of language will support loops. Okay, and you can avoid these kind of situations by doing manually. We can give this to loops, and loops help us to print this for the number of times. Let's see how this is going to work. Okay. Even there is something called iterating over data structures. Okay, so data structures I discussed in the time of variables. Okay, what is variable? And while discussing the variables, how to store the multiple values, so we use list, tuple, then set, then dict, and then there is something called a string. Okay, so these parameters works little bit differently. We can, meaning they hold the multiple values as a single object, right, in a single variable. Okay, and if you wants to loop through, meaning if you wants to go through each of item of that data structure, so whatever I discussed, list, tuple, set, these are the data structures of Python. Okay, and if you wants to go through the each item of that, so we can use loops. Okay, that is fine. So now you got a clear picture that why we need loop. But how to write a loop? Okay, so Python support two main types of loops. Okay, obviously, in most of the programming language, you will see these two loops. Okay, but here in case of Python, the loops works little differently. Okay, while loop is very similar in all the programming languages, but yes, it is. I mean, if you come across the for loop, here in case of Python, it works little bit differently. You can iterate over the data structures directly using membership operator. But whenever we start with loops, whenever you have to create a loop, let's say while loop. So we understood that loop is used to execute the same code a couple of times until the specified condition is true. Meaning there is something called a condition. You have to give the condition when the loop is going to end. But obviously you are saying when the loop is going to end. Before that, you need to say, you need to tell to the Python when loop should start. Okay, so these conditions are required. Whenever you define loop should start, starting point of loop is referred as an initialization. If you give the condition when the loop should end, so that will be a condition. And there is something called another statement that you need to add into your loops while working with while loops in a Python, that is increment and decrement. How to reach to the end point from starting to end, from initialization to condition. That is what your increment or decrement. So you have to say that. Okay, let's see now how it is going to work. How we can create a loop. Let's say I have to print this. It is fine. I have to print this for several times. Okay, just consider for 5 times. So what I need to do is I need to start a loop first. To start a loop, what we need is we need initialization. We need to say when loops should start. Okay, consider any variable. That variable you are going to use for the condition. So if I say x is my variable, x is equal to 1, it should start at 1. Okay, fine. Then this is what my condition. Then you have to say while. While is a loop. Here in the while, immediately after the while keyword, what you need to do, you need to specify the condition. So what is my condition? So we are going to create a block that will come after the condition. So here you can say x is less than or equal to 5. Meaning what I wanted to do is I wanted to execute the block of code, whatever the code I will return inside this while loop for these many times. Meaning until this condition is true, it should get executed. Okay, and what is my code? So I have to print hello. Okay, so obviously we need to add the indentation here. Then and then only Python is going to consider the block, otherwise it will not consider the block and it will throw error. Okay, fine. Now two things we have completed. We have given here as a condition in the while statement, condition. On next line, if I say initialization, we started with the initialization. On next line, we have given the condition and we have completed our block of code, meaning whatever the Python code you have to write for this code, this loop, you can write and then at the end inside a block. Obviously, even your increment and decrement should be in the loop only, loop block only. So here I'm going to say, so now why we use increment or decrement? Obviously, we are at 1 and we have to reach until 5. Okay, obviously, if we do not reach to the 5, your loop is not going to stop at all. If I execute this much, the problem is what? Okay, so it will come here. X will come here. It will check the value. This condition is going to check the value until this condition is true. Meaning, obviously, at very first place, when value of X is 1, it will say true. Why? Because 1 is lesser than 5. Right? It will say true. The moment this expression returns true, whatever we return inside the while loop, inside the while loop block, that will get executed. It is fine. Then again, when the execution of block code done, it will come back to while. Again, it will check the value of X. Okay, but we have not changed the value of X. Value of X will remain same once again. Right? Again, it is 1. Condition will be true. And this is going to happen n number of times. This is not going to stop at all because we are not increasing. We are not moving towards our condition. Right. So concern is how to move. So you need to use the incremental or decremental. Obviously, assignment operators we have seen. If I say x plus is equal to 1. So like this, we can write. If you don't like this statement, or if it might be difficult to understand at the starting, you can say x is equal to reassign the value of x to the x plus 1. Okay. This expression is evaluated to 2. Okay. Now what is going to happen here in this case? What will happen? Okay. Again, at very first place, when we start execution of code, this condition will come. This will be true. This will be true. Okay. When the condition is true, it will execute the block of code, whatever the block of code we have written inside the while loop. It will execute all the code. But here, at last, what we are doing, we are updating the value of x, right? We are reassigning the variable. And here now value of x will be 2. Right. Now when my cursor come to this loop to check the condition for the next iteration, okay, what will happen here? This value will not be there. Value of x will be 2. Right. Here a value of x will be 2. Again, condition will be true. It will execute. But on next line, again, what it is going to do? Here, it will say x is 2. 2 plus 1, 3. It is increasing. That is what our increment. Okay. And similarly, we will go for 4. Similarly, we will go for 5. Okay. Until 5, it will check. Even you can say until 5, all the conditions meaning are true. Whenever it returns to this condition returns true, Python will execute block of code of while loop. Okay. It has executed. Let's say on next line, what will happen? Now next number will be 6. Obviously, after 5, what will come? 6. And now if Python goes to check my condition once again here, okay, if it comes here and if it checks, okay, x is nothing but 6 now here in this case. If it is 6, whether this condition is returning true or false, obviously it will return false. The moment it returns false, Python will stop execution of loop. Whatever the code we have written inside this block will not be executed and it will move ahead with the next code. This is how it's going to work. Okay. And now I have given the all the 3 conditions. So here I will say increment I'm giving, but let's say in case if you are moving from 5 to 1, you will subtract the number. That is what your decrement. But why we need, you got a clear idea why we need to write this. If we do not write this, loop never, meaning your x will not increase or x will not be updated, then condition will be always true. And when the condition is true, Python will keep executing hello, 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 hello. Okay, whatever the code you have written here. Now I am going to write this. Okay, now I don't need to write the same code again to print hello 5 times. Loop will do that for me. Right? And even here also you can see, so let me run once again, let me run once again. So whenever you will run this code, whatever you have written inside this will get executed for those many number of times. Let's say now you wanted to print numbers. Okay, that is fine. Instead of hello, you can use x here. If you use x, obviously what is there in x? X is a number. So it will print 1 to 5 number. If I run this, you can see that 1 to 5. Now my point is, I would like to print 1 to 100. It is possible, right? With the help of, within a fraction of second, you will get 1 to 100 number printed on your screen. Actually, we are not going to print number. In actual practice, we never try to print the number. Print is not our Python's output. Print is just for the testing purpose. How your code behaves. That is what you have to check. Okay. So this is about the while loop. All the things we have discussed. Right. Even we can use this loop on the data structures like list, tuple, and all. We will discuss that part in the respective video. Okay. So now, if you are done with this, so next type of loop is for loop. Okay, what is for loop? Again, loop purpose remains same. Only word is changed and little bit syntax is changed. Okay, you may see this kind of loop structure in other programming language, but Python do not support this kind of structure like initialization, condition, and increment. Everything will be taken care by the Python itself. We need not to worry. We have to give the data to the Python. How to give the data? Okay, so it works. That's why I said here for loop is used for iterating over a sequence. Sequence is nothing but you have a values in the form of list, comma separated values, and if you want to do something on that, you are good to use for loop. It is advanced loop. In uh, other programming languages, it works like for each loop. In Java, there is something called a for each loop. The same way here, Python has for loop. Okay, but the problem is what? You do not need to define everything here. You simply have to say for I in. Okay, and now the concern is how to print the numbers. Okay, here we don't need to give the conditions like starting number, meaning initialization, condition, where to go and how to increment. Everything will be taken care by this range function. So if you want to deal with the number, Python has something called a range function. This is a sequence type function. This returns. Okay, here first parameter you are going to say is starting number. Then you can say when this should stop. Okay, so 5 I will say, and what will be the step. If you do not write anything for the step, it will consider step is 1. Step is meaning what will be the number, next number. If I say 1, let's say 1. Okay, here by default is 1. If you do not specify, it will be 1. But if you specify 1 plus 1 2, 2 plus 1 3, it will keep increasing, meaning the numbers, it will print the numbers in this way. Okay, if I say print, and here obviously we have to create a block scope, because again we are in a loop. And if I say I is a variable. Okay, it's not like that every time you can use I. You can use your name also. That is not a problem. Even you can use my name also. That is not a problem. Anything would be fine here. It's a variable, but it is convenient to use I, because even whenever you see, whenever you will go to search for these loops and all, you will see either I and J kind of variable or X and Y kind of variables. But these are the variables. This is nothing apart from the variable. Now, if I say I in a range of 1 to 5, okay. So in case of Python, the first value is called lower bound. Second value is called upper bound. And the third value is called a step. Or we can say start and step. Okay. You can say first value as a starting point. This is what the end point and step. But while execution, what Python does, Python consider this value, but Python do not consider the last value. Okay. It is not going to consider this value, 5. It will consider one value below of that value. Okay. Meaning every time, whenever you use this range function, it will ignore the last value. It will not add that value in iteration. Okay. So now if I try to run this, okay, if I run this, you can see that it is printing 1 2 3 4. But what is my expectation? I want 1 to 5. So if you want to do the same, what you can do, you can write 6 here, one number above the number which you want. So if you write 6 here, it will print up to 5. Okay. So upper bound is always skipped by Python for loop. Okay. If you use range, okay, even for loop, it is very easy to use this with the sequence. Okay. Sequence is like, okay, string, we can say it is a sequence of character. So if I write something like web chap, okay, now if I say for I in operator is, this operator is called a membership operator. This helps you to go through the each of value of, and here if I say web champ, okay, and now you have to do something with each of the character of this. Let's say you have to print this one by one. I will say I will say I, and now I don't want this to be executed. Okay, this will get executed, but I don't want this. So here I will comment out this. Okay, so Python comments are meaning you can skip the execution for the testing purpose. Okay, or if you want to write something about your code, you can use the comments. If you write hash, it will be a single line comment. Okay, so like this, I can select, and if you simply press Control question mark, it will comment out. Okay, in most of the IDs, this is what going to work. Now if I run this, you can see that it is printing web charm. Okay, each character of this sequence will be extracted. In technical language, it is iterating through the each character of web charm, which character of string. Okay, iterating meaning just going through one by one, one by one. Okay, am I specifying anything here as an initialization condition? Nothing, right? So Python will take care for that. This is what the advanced for loop. In other programming languages, for each loop is there, but here in case of Python, they have simply said for loop. This is how it's simple. Okay, let's say you may have here list. It is fine. It can be a list, it can be a tuple, it can be a dictionary, it can be, for dictionary it will work little bit different, but yes, again that is a collection, so you can use. So if I say 1 2 3 4 5, so here in this case nothing will be ignored. Okay, this is what another range. In case of range function, last value or upper bound will be ignored. In case of list, nothing will be ignored. And if I say print I, it is going to run. Okay, instead of this I don't want to print numbers. Instead of this, I can print hello. Okay, whatever you want, you can pass here. That will be taken care by the Python. Okay, if you want to do addition of all these numbers, you can do. How to do? Okay, just go and say I is equal to sum of sum plus I. Okay, even let's say I, not I, you, okay, value of I we are going to use. We have not defined a sum anywhere. So before taking the sum, what you need to do is you need to declare the variable. Obviously, if the variable is not there in loop, you cannot declare. I mean, okay, it will work, but that will be a matter, that will be a problem. Okay, so it is always good to declare the variable and initialize the value outside of loop, and then assign the value to that in the loop. Okay, so what it is going to do, it will give me the total sum of all these 5 numbers. Even you can take this for 1,000 numbers also. Okay. If I run this, now it is going to print. Okay, and here on next line after the loop, obviously loop we will use to print the, sorry, to get the each number added to the sum. Right, here we have said sum is equal to 0. I have initialized the sum variable with the value 0. Obviously 0 is not going to affect anything in case of sum, but if you want to do the multiplication, don't use 0, you can use 1. If you multiply anything with 0, it will be 0 remain, and then you will end up with the wrong result. Okay, so now let's say this is sum is 0, 0 plus 1. For first iteration, it will say 1, it will get updated to 1. On next line, 1 plus 2, it will get updated to 3. 3 plus 3, it will get updated to 6. 3 plus 4, okay, and like this we will get the result as in 15. If I run this, you will see the total sum is 1 to 5 number. Okay, so total sum of 1 to 5 number is 15. This is how it's going to work. This is how loop helps you to do the, or to automate your repetitive task. Otherwise, what you need to do, you need to add one by one everything. Not required. Okay, for a few samples, it is fine. But for the large volume of data, large range, it is not good. So loops are very helpful. Okay. But again, I have a question in my mind. What if, okay, so this is not initialization, okay, in case of for loop, we initialize to store the result. Okay, don't assume this is the initialization. Okay, not initialization of variable, not of for loop. The question is what? Let's say if I wanted to break the loop at some point, I wanted to have the more control on the loop. Because if we start the loop at this point, it will end up with combining all the numbers. Okay, what I want is I wanted to control this. I wanted to add the conditions so that I can break the loop. I can skip the operation. Obviously, if I wanted to skip the adding last number 5, I don't want that number to be get added in my sum by any reason. Okay. So Python has something called loop control statements. So there is something called a break. That statement is going to help you to break your loop at any specific or specified condition. Then there is something called a continuous. If you use this continuous statement, your that iteration will be skipped. Then let's say there is something called else. When your loop execution will be successful, in that case, if you want to do something, okay, so what you can do, you can use the else block with the loop also. This is valid for while loop and for loop. For both the situations, this is good. Okay, fine. Now, okay. So let's see how this works. If I wanted to use the break statement, let's say I would like to stop the execution of my loop at certain condition. When my value reaches to, okay, let's say I have more numbers 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, to create the more on environment, this environment, okay, to add something. So let's say I have to take the sum of 5 numbers. And when my condition says, meaning when I reaches to the 6, it should stop the execution. It should stop the execution and it will directly go and execute the further code. Okay, that is fine. Okay, now let's understand how these statements are going to help us. There is something called a break, but how to give the break? Okay, obviously you need to give the condition. For the condition, we need a conditional statement, so we can use the conditional statement like here. If I say if, okay, if I is equal to, I'm going to compare the value, whether my value of I is equal to 6 or not. Obviously, if it is, okay, so we can create a block inside a block. Obviously, whenever you have to create the block, indentation matters. Okay, so here again we will leave the space of 1 tab for the indentation, so that Python will understand whatever we are writing here is for the if block. Okay, and what I did, I said simply if I is equal to 6. I don't want to do anything. Okay, simply I would like to break my loop. I would like to stop the execution of my loop so that it will stop the further. Meaning whatever the code you write in your for loop or in your loop block after the break statement, that will be skipped. If you write something before this, it will get executed. Okay, now what we did, we said simply when I is equal to 6, I would like to break the loop. So break is a keyword. It's a reserved keyword in Python. You can use to stop your loop. Okay, that's why we say this is a control statement. And now if I run this, okay, so let me clear this. CL, yes. Now if I run, okay, so here you can see that it is returning me 15, meaning it is returning the sum of first 5 numbers only. what about the next numbers? Why it is not adding? It should add. Okay, we know that if we take the sum of 1 to 10, it should be 55, but it is stopping. The sum value is 15 only. Why? Because of this break statement. What it is doing, it will stop the execution the moment this condition gets true. I is equal to 6, meaning when meaning loop will start the execution for the value of I is equal to 6. This condition will become true and it will hit the break statement. Before that, it will not hit the break statement. And then until and unless it hit the break statement, loop will continue to execute. Okay, that's why for I is equal to 1, this block or whatever the code we have written after this break statement will be executed, because this condition does not allow your Python to reach this statement until this condition true. The moment it says this condition is true, your loop will be stopped. Okay, now if I change this, okay, if I say I would like to do this for the 7, now 6 will get added. Okay, so if I say 15 plus 6, 21, so you are able to get the 21 result. If you don't pass anything here, if I comment out everything and if I run this, you will get the 55 as a result. It will get executed for all. Right now. Okay, this is about my loops. Now if I run this will stop execution. Okay, now problem is what? Next problem, meaning we are done with the breaks. Okay, it will break the loop and continue further execution. That's why it is printing the sum. Otherwise, it would have not printed sum as well. Okay. Now my question is, I would like to print the sum, but I don't want to consider any number like 7. I don't want to consider 7 in my addition. So if we consider 1 to 10 is 55, out of 55, if we subtract the 7, it will be a 48. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to skip one iteration only, not to break the loop. Okay. So in that case, what we can do? We can use the continue statement. If you write the continue here instead of break, it will stop the execution for that condition only, not for further all. So what break was doing, if break is there, it is going to stop the loop execution. Okay. Instead of this, if you want to skip one iteration, what you can do? You can use the continue. Continue will skip addition of 7 only. That is the purpose of continue. But it will not affect 8, 9, 10 values, meaning addition of 8, 9, 10. Okay. And now if I run this, you can see that you are getting 48 here. Right. So continue help us to keep iteration. Break help us to break the loop. It will stop the execution of loop. Okay, fine. So this is how it works. Now, next statement is else. Else is an optional block. If you write, it is good. If you don't write, meaning when there is a situation you may want to write, you can write. Otherwise, it is not mandatory to write else block. But if you add else block after the loop, okay, else we can use with the conditional, that is different. But also if we use with the loops, that is different. Okay, we can write else. So I'm writing here else. Okay, fine. And I'm saying that print. Okay, and I will say loop is not break. Okay, this is how I made the statement. Okay, to understand. Okay, so if I run this now, after the okay, before the result, this will get executed. Before the result, this will get executed. Right. Okay, fine. So if I run this, you can say that it is saying that loop is not break. Meaning, if you do not break the loop, by any reason, if your loop execution will not get completed or succeeded, else block will not be executed. When your loop succeeds, in that situation only, this block is going to execute. Okay, now let's see how this is going to work. Okay, so instead of this, if I use the break statement, okay, so in case of continue, we have seen else block is getting executed, right? But if I use the break, I'm breaking the loop. So loop will not get succeeded, right? In that situation, else block will not be executed. If I run this, you will see only number, nothing will be printed. Okay. So there may be a situation that if your loop gets succeeded, you may want to do something before Python start execution of further code. So that code you can write inside a else block. Right. So this is how these three statements, break, continue, and else, help us to control the execution of loops in Python. And with this, I would like to conclude the video. I would like to conclude the topic called loops in Python. I hope you like the content of this video. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a nice day. Please do not forget to subscribe web channel.